This is part 12 of my haul out progress report so far, late May 2021. We're hauled out in the Rebecca Island shipyard, which is in the top middle of the photograph. Here's an image of Rebecca Island, which is an island off Langkawi Island in Malaysia. And here's an image of my boat on the hard in the shipyard. Finished enough of the work on the hull so far, so we started preparing the hull by placing blue tape around the waterline and in preparation for the 3 coats of epoxy resin that I intend to seal the hull with. You can see the blue tape in different areas, and that's so that when we move the stands we can sand off and complete the painting of the hull in preparation for putting it back in the water. That afternoon we had a really bad rainstorm and gale, which flooded out most of the hard stand area at the shipyard. As you can see, the water came down the roadway and into the area where my boat is, which is the low-lying area of the hard stand area, and it quickly filled up the drains. Malaysia has large drains for this same purpose, and at the end of the rainstorm all the drains were so full and all my equipment that wasn't on tables was washed away, and I had to recover it. I was able to recover all of the equipment and put it all back into its little place, but a lot of the other boats got so badly wet through. And one example was a Frenchman's boat. He had no table, so all his electrical equipment and paperwork and all sorts of different stuff was laying on the ground and got wet through. Others lost equipment that floated away but recovered most of it. And as you can see from this, the water got quite high, but we didn't lose anything. The next morning we put on the first of our 3 coats of epoxy resin to seal the hull, and the first coat we used Crocin 90, which was a local product which works rather well, and only it does get a little bit lumpy and has to be normally sanded back, but you'll see that developing my amateur technique of rolling on the resin and wiping it off on the tray and then rolling it again and again. We mixed up batches of about 300 millilitres at a time so that it didn't get hot and go off, which epoxy tends to do. If you make too much of it at one time, it'll coagulate and get really hot and just go completely off. So making small batches was the way to go. I used the small roller for the first coat so that I can concentrate on getting a smooth finish rather than having runs. And runs need to be sanded, and I was trying to avoid too much sanding. In this case there was a really good finish when it dried, and I was really happy, and I didn't need to sand that much. The one problem I had was not knowing where I'd started and finished each batch, and that caused me to later on add some brown filler to see what I was doing. Later on in the day it was nice and dry to a touch, and you can see a nice shine which looks good, but does need to be sanded off so that the next coat adheres to the first coat. I also realised that the insects gathered on it and there was lumpy bits, so it needed to be sanded anyway. So the next morning I did some light sanding of the port hull, and you'll see here that I'm using a air compressor sander, which made our job really much easier. The roller leaves little daggy bits now and then, and also the epoxy had a sweet finish to it, and it attracted the insects, and there was also a little bit of grit and muck that gathered, that needed to be sanded off as well. So after sanding it, it turned out really nice, and then I wiped it down with a dry, clean cloth to get rid of the sanding dust, and here I am wiping it down, and of course I did both sides of the porthole in preparation for the next step, which was wiping it down with a fresh clean cloth covered in acetone to clean the surface and get rid of the morning dew and other impurities, to make the painting of the second coat of epoxy much easier. When there's a light breeze, I don't really need to worry about the toxic fumes of the acetone, but today, on this particular day, it was there was no wind, so that's why I'm wearing a mask, so I didn't breathe in those nasty little fumes. So the second coat, I decided to change over to the West Systems 105 and 209. Got a hold of some brown micro balloon, I think it's called, and I added 1 scoop to every 300 ml of the 2-part West Systems epoxy. But that 1 scoop wasn't enough, and you can see that the second coat finish has spots. I was able to then use the brown finish to know where I was up to and complete the job properly. We did 3 coats, including the brown micro balloon, on the rudders, and you can see that the finish is much better, and it actually caused a much smoother finish than I thought it would turn out to be, and I was very happy with that, so that I could sand it down and make it look great, ready for the copper coat. The video was produced by myself, and it's the end of another exciting video of part 12 of our haul out at Reback Island Shipyard, my progress report so far.